this was I should record it. For years, this was the only room in the house that even had an AC. They just put
Yeah.
one in the living room, and last night we're sitting there. It's like it's got to be like above 30, which means it's in the living room is probably like 85 or 90 degrees. I'm like, so if we have this air conditioner, isn't now when we use it? Or it's like, no, don't take off your socks. I'm like, yeah, it's still hot.
Yeah.
And I
Um,
ended up barely eating dinner because when it's real hot, especially the first day of the year when it's real hot, you're just like, I don't want to eat anything. Oh, on the Kentucky. Oh, this is Tennessee, I guess. That's not bourbon, but yeah. Have you ever been to the Jack Daniel's distillery?
I have not. It's one of those things that when I drive through Kentucky on my way, or Kentucky and Tennessee on my way down to, which I made that drive down to Atlanta a number of times. I was like, I should stop at a couple of these places. The Corvette Factory in Bowling Green, um, the the Jim Beam place, the Jack Daniels place. But then I'm like, I think I'm better off just getting out of these states as quickly as I can.
Yeah, there's that too. The Jack Daniel's one is weird because it's a dry county, so you can't actually buy Jack Daniel's there. Um,
That is so bizarre that
they
stuff
give
like
you
that
lemonade at the
exists.
end. At the end of the tour, they give you lemonade. But we had this old guy giving the tour, and he seemed like he'd been piling on lots of the Jack. And our tour guide seemed like a really drunk hillbilly guy, which was fun.
Uh-huh. It
But
is. Yeah, it's anyway, it's an interesting take on how, different groups want different rules imposed upon other people.
yeah, I couldn't do the Jim Beam though when I'd have too many flashbacks to bad college hangovers.
Oh yeah, yeah, I get that.
Jim Beam was never good to me. Yeah. Because it's all over Japan. Japan's weird that
Oh no way. Okay.
you could find Jim Beam very easily. But Japan makes started making whiskey like 100 years ago, but most of their whiskey tastes like scotch. So you end up having like basically cheap scotch. There's Nika Black and it's like
Hmm.
$12 and it's I mean it's as good as say a
Hey.
Johnny Walker Black. I mean it's a single malt, no, but is it like a decent,
So
reasonable sipping scotch? Sure.
we were walking around Edinburgh, and because we went there for Christmas last year, and my wife said something like, "Oh, there's a liquor store. You can go get your Jimmy Walker Black or whatever it is that you drink." I'm like, Jimmy Walker Black.
Not in Edinburgh.
Dynamite.
No, I would say you wouldn't want to buy that in Scotland.
I certainly would think that have some other options.
But no, we did a few when my parents were visiting last year. We went through a couple of the single malts so while they were here. So that was fun. I mean, the ones you can get in Japan, but they are Scotch, the Scottish Scotch.
Hmm.
But then at the end I was like, oh, I just got the black. I was like, this isn't much worse than what we were drinking before. So, and it's like one
Yeah.
fourth the price.
Oh, that's great.
Do you have my notes because that has the prologue in them?
I do.
Okay. I found I think we've already done this where I just am saying the Zoom whiteboard is dodgy. Although it seemed to work in my last couple of classes. The problem is the only person I use it with now is so low level. Like if I just ask, "Do you see it?" I might not get a response. And
Okay.
I teach the class and the camera for whatever reason is on them like this the whole time. So I can't even get like visual cues. Like this is the visual they give me when I'm teaching them. Or maybe I see their
Oh
eyes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So I'm like, I can't tell what's going on with that student. I don't actually know what she looks like because
So
she's
are you
never just put herself on camera.
do you do how do I say?
Zoom lessons.
Yeah, like I mean you mostly teach in person, yeah?
Right. Like, during pandemic, we started doing all Zoom lessons for a while, but then some people kept
Yeah.
doing them. So, the girl, I guess she doesn't live super close, but it's not like her dad can't drive her. And I don't know what it is. I have another guy who's high school and he lives like 50 miles away, so he's not coming for class every week. Like
Yeah.
over a mountain range. So,
Hmm.
yeah, it makes sense that he's zooming in, of course.
I'm looking
Hopefully I don't sound too
for
froggy. I was rocking out allergies all last week. Yeah, I think it was Friday night where I'm giving a practice test to kids and I'm talking to them. And, it sounds like I'm.
No, but when you said I was rocking out, I was sad to hear the word allergies come after that. I thought maybe you were, doing something a little bit more fun. That's funny. We both have notes on the 21 Brooklyn Dodgers.
Was rocking out also last night. Sure, sure. I
Good.
brought it, got out. I was playing a bass six. Familiar with the bass six?
No, is it a six-string bass?
Yeah.
No,
You
not at
uh,
all.
and they're all over the place. I was looking like songs that use them. I Get Around has a bass six. Mr. Tambourine Man. And the Get Back when you see John or George
Yeah.
playing bass, they're playing a bass six. So actually,
Let me
boy,
get
if
this.
you watch Get Back, you'll recognize this thing.
Okay.
There we go. Yeah, this guy. Ooh. So I've been expanding my Get Back guitar collection, but yeah, this one's weird. It doesn't seem that practical for recording, but it's way fun to play. So
That is cool.
The Cure uses
I
them for
am,
some goth stuff. Yeah,
yeah, the file you sent
yeah.
is
I think you have to download it if
it
you're looking
was,
at it on Discord. It cuts off the lines.
yeah, it was, well, when I downloaded it, it was all on one line.
Oh,
So
okay.
I had to, put some new lines into and it wouldn't, no big deal. It's just kind of what I was, if I seemed distracted, that's what I was doing.
Okay, yeah, no problem. No,
But yeah, I've got it. I've got the prologue or is that what they call it on this? A prologue?
I think so. Or maybe
Yeah.
I'm just listening to too much Mission Log. I don't
Prologue.
know. Right,
Yeah.
right. I'm just used to hearing that. There. I'm finding you actually. Okay. I have so many, like I have multiple browsers for dumb reasons now, and then Zoom's like a
Mm,
different one. So, um,
gotcha.
okay. Well, let's plop on into this one then, I guess.
Flop away.
Welcome to Time Enough Podcast. It's where we delve into all of the episodes of the Twilight Zone and beyond. This is Matt here as always. Coming back from Mission Log, the Orville podcast. It's Mike Richards. Howdy.
Hey, Matt, good to be back, man. Thanks for having me. Always enjoy coming out to the Time Enough podcast.
Yeah, scheduling, it's too bad we couldn't do it on a Thursday, but it wouldn't have been a Thursday for both of us anyway because of the time difference. So it'd be like
So, yeah, so I watched this episode and then it kind of like immediately Paramount Plus rolled into the next episode, which is what a trip on the St. Anne or
Passage
something
on the
like that. It's
Lady
called
Anne. Yeah.
Passage on the Lady Anne. And they're talking to the travel agency and she goes, "But sir, we're planning on going this Thursday." And I was like, "Oh, mother of God, did I just watch the wrong episode?" So
Nope, nope. That's
I just did a quick double take. I was like, okay, yeah, I just spent, the last, I don't know, it's probably an hour and a half by the time I pause, go back, watch the scene a couple of times. Um,
yeah. We all had a
it,
heart attack over at the Films and Filth podcast a few months ago because we did Black Christmas, right? But there's
yeah,
like four different versions of Black Christmas, and at least one of us almost
yeah.
watched the wrong one. So
Oh no,
uh, the
glad you
the
got it
the
sorted out.
the bad one was the 2019 one, which we decided it wasn't so much bad as just targeted directly at tween girls. So if you're a tween girl, it's probably pretty good.
Right. Yeah.
So, sometimes you
Yeah.
just have to be
For
like,
the
this is
audience.
made for a certain group of people, and then it's
Hmm.
fine, right? Yeah. So anyway, this one I thought was a pretty solid Twilight Zone episode. Season four, where it's always like, am I going to get bored somewhere in the middle? And I think I made one note where maybe they stretched it a little bit, but that's like one scene. So I guess they're doing pretty well. He gives a speech twice, doesn't he? About
Yeah,
Earth.
it it I mean, sure. I mean, I think it could have been adapted to to the 30-minute time slot. But, overall, I think it moved at a decent pace. I didn't pick up a lot of dead spots with it. A couple of things it's difficult to figure out at first. But it maybe not difficult to figure out, just questions that I had in the beginning of the episode got answered as we went in further. So I thought, well, that was time well spent.
Yeah. I don't know if you remember this one so well, but I was thinking of this as kind of the flip side of season one's The Lonely, which has the
The single guy
convict,
and his robot girlfriend, right?
yeah, on an asteroid. And I because it's a different actor. It's not James Whitmore in there, but it's kind of a similar vibe. But then it's
Right.
like the opposite, where he really would like to get off of this thing. But then
Hmm.
the robot. Anyway, I thought it. I'm not saying this one copies that one all, but I was thinking about it while watching this for sure.
Yeah. I was thinking about how the logos on the Space Force were the same logos that Jack Klugman et al. Had in Death Ship, which I think was the last episode I covered with you.
Yeah, there was something on Wiki. One of those suits was in both episodes, and of course, it's from Forbidden Planet originally, and it sold for some crazy auction price. I guess now I have to cite it. If I still have that page up, I have a page for Paprika up. That's different. There we go. Let's see. A crew member shirt also used in the episode Death Ship was offered at auction in late September 2015 with an estimated value of why is this here? Okay, $1,600. That sounds like a normal Hollywood
That's like just a
expenditure.
regular shirt, right? Like this shirt was like 1.8, I mean, come
Yeah.
on.
That means someone bought it and then went on the wiki and bragged about it that way by making it a fact on wiki. That's what I think happened. Anyway, it'd be cool to have that shirt, I guess. And if you
It
got
would be, man.
memorabilia
Yeah.
money to blow away, sure.
And
Actually, I
the
guess
Colonel
you
had a hat with that same logo on it too, which I thought was kind of cool. I went back and just looked at some stills from Death Ship to see if I could see, the baseball cap with that same logo. I did not see one, but
mm.
but clearly the same logo.
Anyway, now I do not feel bad about not including the auction stuff in my trivia, so I'll give you the things I did include in my trivia.
And here's Matt with trivia.
That's right. Original air date was May 2nd, 1963. Script is a Serling. Regular director Buzz Kulick is in the director's chair. This is the ninth and last of his Twilight Zone episodes. He did not come back for season five. We see Forbidden Planet props and costumes often in the zone, but this one seems to have pretty much everything except for Robbie the robot, who we saw a week or two ago anyway. So, in the toy episode, or no, that maybe it's next week's. Time is last week's episode. Okay, what airs and what I'm recording, it always throws you in for a time loop.
Oh, heck yeah.
Time becomes a loop when time becomes a loop. Excuse me. Um, Captain William Benteen was played by James Whitmore. He was a pretty legendary actor of television and movies, appearing as head of the Simian Assembly in Planet of the Apes, prison librarian Brooks Hatlin in The Shawshank Redemption, and garnering an Oscar nom playing Harry Truman in Tora Tora Tora. Tim O'Connor
Wow.
played Colonel Sloan. Though he found his niche playing military types like Sloan, the genre dorks among us will remember him as playing Dr. Elias Hewer and Buck Rogers in the 25th century.
Heck yeah, we do.
Yeah, he also had notable roles on General Hospital and Peyton Place. Quick aside, when I was born in '79, so I was seeing maybe reruns of Buck Rogers when I was 2 or 3 and loved it. I had the toys and
Hmm.
stuff, but little kid memory. So a few years later, um, I was like, what was that cool thing? And I was watching Logan's Run, another cool thing, but not quite the same vibe. So I was like, something felt like it was missing for years until I rediscovered the Buck Rogers in a 25th Century show.
Right.
Um,
He also appeared in one episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation. He was responsible for presenting Famke Jensen as the perfect mate to the other warring party that they were trying to reach détente with, but who got you know um attached, we'll say, to Jean-Luc
that's a different
Picard.
episode.
Yeah.
Being the one where he's attached to Crusher
Oh yeah, yeah.
mentally. Uh, James Broderick was Al Baines, and if you're wondering, yes, this is Matthew Broderick's pops. His career popped a bit after this appearance, as he had a regular role in the TV show Family and appeared in films like The Taking of Pelham 123 and Dog Day Afternoon. Those are the
I rewatched Family a few months ago. It was on one of the free streamers. I remember that show when I was a kid. I can't tell you exactly what years it ran, 75 to 80 or something along those lines. Show really holds up, and it really took on a lot of progressive issues, even by today's standards. So if you get a chance to check out Family with James Broderick, I would recommend it.
and yeah, he died surprisingly young, 82, so just 2 years after that show ended. Uh, age 55. I guess it's just that's surprising since, Matthew Broderick is such a well-known person on stage and screen, you know.
Right.
Uh you had a chance to edit that prologue. Sorry for the single line going on forever, but now you've got it readable. So if you could give that to us,
I will do my best.
I should give you the introduction since you gave me the trivia one. No, here's Mike Richards with the prologue.
This is William Benteen, who officiates on a disintegrating outpost in space. The people are a remnant society who left the Earth looking for a millennium, a place without war, without jeopardy, without fear. And what they found was a lonely, barren place whose only industry was survival. And this is what they've done for 3 decades: survive until the memory of the Earth they came from has become an indistinct and shadowed recollection of another time and another place. 1 month ago, a signal from Earth announced that a ship would be coming to pick them up and take them home. In just a moment, we'll hear more of that ship, more of that home, and what it takes out of mind and body to reach it. This is the Twilight Zone.
Well, that throws you straight in because sometimes, like, where is the Twilight Zone? The little girl lost being our strongest android here. So, no, this is the Twilight Zone right here.
It was I don't know if you ever do word counts on these. That seemed like a long prologue. A lot of world
It is a
building
long
involved
one.
in it. Okay.
The longest being It's a Good Life, which is the cornfield episode.
Hmm.
And that one is like a short story, like just in the prologue. But it has to set up so much high concept stuff, which this one has
Right.
to, like you said, it needs to at least world build a little bit. I guess it doesn't need to
Yeah.
introduce you to some weird supernatural quirk or
And
anything,
and
but
and that world they're building is apparently Tatooine.
yeah, 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 okay. That didn't even occur to me. I did see that at the top of your notes when I glanced at them, but
I thought so, but like in Tatooine, the sun's set. We could see that, and there was nighttime. This one apparently the planet is tidally locked with the sun, so because it never goes down, it's always daytime. I guess they got to go to the other side of the planet to get some nighttime.
yeah. I wonder if that's what they do for vacations.
I'm sure that's right at the top of their list.
But I don't know. Would you rather be stuck on a planet that is a little too hot or a little too cold? They are slightly out of the Goldilocks zone here. I mean, obviously, they can go out without
Mm.
spacesuits or something, but it, yeah. I mean, this being the middle of July, I certainly was not enjoying watching everyone sweat.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to think of what's personally I prefer a somewhat cooler climate. I'm trying to think of just practicality reasons. I mean, certainly it didn't look like anything was growing where they were. Uh, does slightly cooler, I think slightly cooler lends itself better to agriculture.
They do grow something because he says something like you won't have to put a canopy or a tarp over your crops to protect them from the two suns or something along those lines. Like
Yeah,
when you get to Earth, the
right.
sun will help your crops and not harm them. So
Yeah,
maybe
yep.
they're doing hydroponics or something.
Tell me about Earth, Captain Commages. Tell me, tell me about Earth.
Well, if you're in the States, they have Mexican restaurants. In Japan, there's lots of good food, but you're going to have trouble finding Mexican restaurants. Uh, hey, I'm going to get a pretty good pizza after we record this. Wood
Good
fire,
for you, man.
oven, brick oven fire, whatever it is. They got one of those ovens.
So I learned something today. When I first saw the captain, he was kind of had that hat pulled down and kind of a bucket hat as he was running up towards that antenna array. And I said, man, that looks like the one guy from Andy Griffith that's not Gomer Pyle, but is kind of like Gomer Pyle.
Oh, geez,
So
we talked about him last week, I think.
I go to the Three Dubs, and it was Goober, right? Most people know Goober. I did not realize that Goober's last name also was Pyle.
Were
So
they brothers,
apparently
cousins?
cousins, brothers, maybe cousins and brothers, maybe partners, probably not. At
It was like
least
that NBC crossover where like all the shows had a hurricane in the early 90s, I think, and it just put like all these like weird disparate shows technically are now in the same universe.
oh yeah.
Notoriously, TNG and Webster is in the same universe as we know. So,
Yep,
sometimes these things get tied together very strangely.
sure enough.
Speaking of Trek, I did like how this was kind of like a backwards episode of maybe TOS, where in TOS they fly to a colony and they meet some guy like this and have issues with him, but in this is flipped where the our I I guess he is the antagonist in the end, but the guy we follow through this story, Captain
Sure.
Ventine, is
Yeah.
the other side of the coin. Uh,
He is. He's the one that's being told we call it freedom and you're gonna like it a lot. And he's like, no, I don't want freedom. I want my people. I want to be and I couldn't tell if he, there's so many things that he was going through. One was I do think in a way he wanted what was best for his people. I think he underestimated his folks and thought he could make better decisions than they could. But I do think there was a piece of him that wanted to protect them. There was a big part of him, I think, that wanted to stay in charge, kind of
oh yeah.
kind of no
Well,
matter what. I think that was probably his biggest fault. And then, lastly, I'd say he was one of the few that remembered what Earth was like and knew all of the kind of challenges and pitfalls and reasons for leaving. So there was a lot being jumbled around that we can unpack.
the captain puts down his thesis sentence right after meeting him, which
Hmm.
I wrote down. So and then it's totally something, Kirk would have been. No, this would have been a McCoy line, right? He thinks he's a god and we're booting him out of his heaven. He thinks he's a god and we're booting him out of his heaven. That might have been too strong.
Oh, just give the man a break. He's been here for 30 years taking care of his people. Can't we give him a little time to sort things out?
So yeah, I mean, I did like the crew in this is pretty solid. We talked about how the Death Ship crew was a bunch of morons in outer space, right? Where
Yeah.
this crew is pretty together. They're pretty thoughtful about how they're doing it. They instantly spot the problem, do their best to solve it. I guess they could have. Well, no, they couldn't have tried a little harder or find him at the end. They had 5 minutes to leave. So,
Well, it was interesting because you could see the turn in one instance, right? In my profession, we are, granted, I think it's culturally the the ability to, put captain in front of your name, on business cards, on your signature line when you're writing an email or whatever. Some folks, my friend's dad put captain in the phone book. I thought that was taking it a little bit too far. Since it's not a military rank, right? It's a company, it's a private company. So when the colonel started calling him Mr. Benteen, ooh, my eyebrow went up a little bit. I was like, hello there, buddy. That's Captain Benteen you're talking to. But Benteen did not correct him. And I thought that's kind of cool. He's just kind of rolling with the punches, not getting hung up on titles or anything like that. Shows a certain amount of, I think, humility and ability to kind of roll with the situation. And it was one of his people. I don't think it was Baines, aka James Broderick. I think it was one of the other guys was like, hey man, you're talking to Captain Benteen, okay? That's not Mr. Benteen. So somebody else that pointed out, and I thought that's kind of cool. But shortly thereafter, the colonel called him Mr. Benteen, and he said, it's Captain. So now is where he's trying to start to cling to that. You could really see that was where he was starting to try to cling to that his authority at that point. And you could see it was sort of like the beginning of that slippery slope of insanity that he was heading down.
he got bolstered by his own people a little bit, right? Before that, he was a little more chill. I it's like saying something bad on Facebook and then getting a bunch of likes, I guess.
That's a good way to do it. But you brought something up before where Sloan was like, "There's not going to be a fetching party." Cut to him and Baines down in the caves, and which I could only call a fetching party.
Yeah, echo, echo. No, I put the Colonel's trying way harder than he needs to.
Yeah,
Like he, well, again, that's why I thought this did seem like a flipped on its side Star Trek, because that would be the climax of your TOS episode where they try and make that one last effort, and the Doom megalomaniac, am I saying that right? Is off
yeah.
to gets
Yeah,
stuck.
and
I
then
mean,
there's maybe some sort of a cliff involved, and the guy's slipping, and Kirk says, "Give me your hand," That kind of
Or I
thing.
have had enough of you and kick some in the
Well,
face. That
you
could
know
happen
what?
too.
I think you took it too far in that one. That was the first time I think I ever saw, Kirk just straight up kick a dude off the curb, man. Maybe it was usually like, "Give me your hand." Wait, why would you save me? Like at the end of um, you know, I'll say the Kelvin episode, but not the Kelvin timeline. Where he's like, "Hey, we just fought. Like every episode, we just fought, but we can have a relationship with mutual benefit on both sides." And that was sort of the lesson of many Trek episodes. Then he just kicked poor Krug off the
Yeah.
cliff.
Well, the cliff was gonna fall in a second anyway, so
Yeah, there was really nothing he could. It
yeah.
was, yeah, that was out of his. I do
So
I do have one issue with the prologue. That outpost was not in space. Just wanted to
it's on a
clarify
planet.
that it
Okay.
was on a planet. Go ahead.
Yes, I guess that would be a space station. The impression I got is this is the only space colony. Like they did it and it's a mild failure, so they hadn't tried any others.
I wonder about that because I looked at that very distinguished written in what looked like chalk or maybe white paint with a brush uh dedication plaque to the Pilgrim 1. Um who funded it? Did anybody follow up with them? Uh Apparently yes, 30 years later. Like what were the goals? Was there communication afterwards? Just questions like that, many questions.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking of bad places they could end up, and it's certainly better than the what was the colony called?
SETI
Uh,
Alpha 6.
no, I was looking for LV-426, but yeah, said it the 5 or 6, whichever one it is. That's bad news. Of course, that let's Khan has at least half a reason to be pissed for being there, of course. So,
Yeah.
uh,
He's, same kind of thing with yeah, asked and answered already. So it kind of made me wonder, was this sort of a like a self-funded thing? Like was this something that people were uh tired of Earth, tired of the
I
wars,
went
maybe
looking
threat of
for
war, threat of the hydrogen
LV-426.
war.
Yeah.
Okay.
I went look, well, they say we're gonna get away from war. I was thinking something Weyland Yutani. That's why I went to the aliens page here. But yeah, it they did call it pilgrim, so it is, escaping religious persecution would have been the 17th century thing, right? So this is
Yeah.
escaping hydrogen persecution, maybe.
I guess, there was an awful lot of religious tones in this episode. There was the funeral for the woman that died by suicide. Forgive her for what she's done and that kind of thing. There was some mention of the natural order of things. There was mention of you'll have a chance to be what God intended you to be, man, woman, child. There's just an awful lot of I picked up on a bunch of religious
Yeah, I
tones in this
guess
episode.
it's Pilgrim One, so I guess it is supposed to be kind of a puritanical sort of
Hmm.
vibe, which honestly I don't think the episode needs. I think it's really interesting to watch Captain Benteen simply as a cult leader. I mean, I guess you could add in the religion if you want, but no,
Cult
half of my
leader,
notes are
yeah.
I'm thinking when he every time he's talking, one he's using tons of like neuro-linguistic programming, getting people to repeat simple phrases with
A
him.
lot of so say we all. I was definitely picking up on the Adama-esque um cheerleading that was going on.
See, Adama could handle power a little better. And Benteen, again, it's the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Up until the very end, when he is told directly no by his community, up to that point, he has quote unquote good intentions. Once his people say
Right.
no, he is now that paints him as now the villain, basically, I think.
Yeah, so what did you think of the answer that Sloan came up with, which was why not put it to a vote? Um, because I had a problem with that.
Well, I always go with rock, scissors, papers with my teaching job. So kids have,
Okay.
who's gonna
Yeah.
go first?
Uh,
Rock, scissors, paper. I just throw a little bit to luck.
yeah, I mean that's good. I mean you can kind of feel like you're controlling your own destiny. Here's why. Let's say 30% of those people want to go home. They don't get to go with them now because they lost the vote. Like, why not? And I think it got to the point where Sloan was just like, you know what, whatever. Or maybe it was Bentine who said, you know what, whatever. If you want to go, go. And I was like, that's the way it should be, right? Let people decide for themselves.
Of
But
course. We keep
yeah, but
calling them his children. They're dumb. They don't
yeah,
understand things like I do. I'm the only one here that understands things. Again, you don't trust a person, so you can't trust anyone else. I'm the only one who will not lie to you, you know? That's
yeah,
never
exactly right. I alone, can get this done. That's always a huge red flag. Were we supposed to be getting glimpses of, 1950s uh American version, visions of communism with the line, everybody kind of dressed the same, the lines, the line to get something as simple as water. Is that what that was? Because I see that trope as representation of, and I've never lived in a communist country, so I don't know. I imagine it's, uh, I don't know what to imagine, but I was sort of picking up on maybe that's what they were trying to represent. Any thoughts on that?
maybe I have I believe the governor of Nagano Prefecture was from the Communist Party for at least some time. Although I guess that's different living in a communist country. It got to me the most, I guess, when people started listening, talking about places they would like to live, and all of them are within the continental United States. So my line is just, at least there are no commies that want to live outside of America. So maybe I picked up on it kind of subconsciously there, you know? Like I didn't think
Yeah,
about directly, but the fact that I wrote that note means it was somewhere in the back of my head.
right. Yeah, no, it didn't. He even said, these people may want to live anywhere in the 50 states. Interesting. So this was 2021, right? So as the dedication plaque was 113 people, their numbers went up, right? So the colony wasn't a complete failure.
They had
The
kids.
ship went to the outer regions, whatever that means. And they said it was 30 years later, so 1991. Sloan said last year the Dodgers, still in LA, not back in Brooklyn, said they finished 10th. They came in 10th place. They did not come in 10th place in 2020. They won the World Series in
Oh,
2020.
okay.
So look at the
Nice.
Dodgers outperforming.
Sloane's been on the
Uh,
ship. Maybe he's just making up facts because, yeah.
hey man, you can't. It's okay to outperform the Twilight Zone.
In 1963, was it still fighting words to say the LA Dodgers in 2021? I imagine some people in Brooklyn were still pretty raw about that, you know?
I tell you what, it was. I mean, I don't have any recollection of '63, but my parents who grew up in Brooklyn, just, I mean, year after year after year, losing in seven, losing, just, losing to the Giants in the last game of the National League season, losing to the Yankees year after year after year, and then going to LA and winning a World Series like in their second year there, like just was heart wrenching. So yeah, and then the consolation prize was the Mets. So yeah.
They're rubbing salt in the wounds now. Japanese television, of course, wants to show as much Shohei Ohtani as they can on the news, right? So
Hmm.
I noticed a lot that I guess the B uniforms don't even say Dodgers, just Los Angeles on the front.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I have seen that before as well. Yeah, where it'll just say, the name of the city and that's it. I think their logo is still on the hat. Um, do you know anything? Did these studios reuse matte paintings? Because I was impressed by the matte painting, and I'm sure they must, but I was impressed by the matte painting with that rocky background. I think it was during the burial scene.
I was sitting there wondering if that was also from Forbidden Planet, like all the other props. So,
Yeah, exactly right.
well, yeah, yeah, because think of TNG and TOS in particular always have like the same matte paintings in like five different episodes. So,
Yeah, they got that lithium cracking station that they reused at least twice,
yeah, yeah, and they might,
even after they got the
redo a
dilithium
little
upgrade.
bit. Yeah, redo a little bit for the next one, but you're like, hey, I've
Yeah.
seen that before.
Uh-huh.
Buck Rogers again. They love to reuse matte paintings. Up the wazoo. So yeah, yeah, this does I mean, what I like about this episode basically has all of the look of a wacky 50s sci-fi, but it's on the more thoughtful side. I was thinking
It
some Mad Max. I just watched Furiosa, and then I went and watched Fury Road again, and I was like, okay, this looks like one of those, outposts.
so Fury Road was an absolute blast. I remember seeing that, in the movies when it came out. I've not, I like most people, I skipped Furiosa. Worth the watch.
I mean, if you like Mad Max, George Miller, it's there. Here's the thing that makes it a little different, and I guess recommend it. Chris Hemsworth is by far the talkiest character ever in a Mad Max movie, and it's great.
Okay, good.
I don't know what that, but yeah, he just goes on these weird monologues, and
Does he play a
man,
younger version of the big bad in Fury Road?
no, he Morton
No.
Joe is
Okay.
straight up in the movie. The
Okay.
actor, of course, he was the toe cutter in Mad Max, and then he came
Ah,
back and
got it.
played him. But he's died in the past couple of years. So I do have a different actor, but I mean, he's covered from the face down, so I guess you can get away with that.
All right.
Um,
I will check it out. It's I knew it was in it, but I got such a kick out of Fury Road, man. That was a lot of fun.
no, the main thing going against Furiosa is you can't watch it without comparing it to Fury Road. If that had actually come out first, people would have it would have blown their minds, and then maybe Fury Road would have blown it a little more. And if you're like, oh, it's woke Furiosa, female character, come on, Furiosa was the lead of Fury Road too, so whatever.
Yeah, no doubt. Played by friend of the
Charlize
show,
Theron.
Charlize Theron. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So
I mean, I only say friend of the show because she appeared in an episode of Mission Log the Orville. I'm sorry, Mission Log. I'm sorry, she appeared in an episode of The Orville. We haven't had her on our show yet.
okay. Oh, okay. Then I was gonna say cousin of this show. That's second cousin removed of the show then.
Yeah, I think that probably is.
I don't actually know what second
Um,
cousin
I
removed means.
I don't know what Rockets sounded like in 1991, but when Ben Teen, which I call him Ben Teen, not Ben Teen, um, when Ben Teen ran out there and he was like, "Hear that? Those are rockets!" And I was,
For sure. That can't possibly be anything else. I guess, well, he knew the sound from when he was 15, so,
I guess it sounded like a rocket. I don't know. Was that the same flying saucer prop as Death Ship also?
Yes.
Because I would have paid to see Jack Klugman walk out of that thing. It'd been like great. Like the last place we were didn't suck bad enough.
That one at least had a nice climate.
Yeah, except they were dead.
Oh, yeah, yeah. What does a nice climate do if you're dead? Um, yeah, getting back, I do want to track a little bit more on the cult stuff, just because I thought that was so
Please do. Yeah.
interesting. The other one I thought, and of course this predates Manson, but I was thinking once he realizes he is losing control, does his failed attempt to get everyone to chant? I mean, it starts to work, but then it starts to fail
Mhm.
because he does have that much control. And it's like, oh, this is late stage Manson stuff. I mean, you know,
Yeah, I didn't. I was going full on down the road of communism, like because they kept comparing it to, individuals and your free will and I'm not. And again, I don't. I can't. I don't want to go down the road of saying what. Yeah, I know what it's like to live in a communist country. I don't. I just know what I was told as a child, what it was like to live in a communist country, and that is, not having things like free will, having everything be collectivism, being told what you're going to do when you're going to do it, and that kind of thing. And I thought that was that road. But at the same time, to is it not true that several or some of those revolutions were started in kind of a cult-esque way? Yeah.
oh, for sure. I mean, a cod of linen, they kept the guy's body in a hermetically sealed case for 50. I guess is it, I don't know what's the story on Lenin's body these days. I don't know. Stalin is like, come on, I'm just
Hmm.
I guess you stop being a cult leader once you have like immense power. I don't know.
Yeah. Then it's
Any
no longer
world
a cult.
leader,
Yeah.
yeah, any complete, call to personality, what we call a call to personality. I guess that's what we
Hmm.
do once it's a Stalin or a Lenin or, uh take any number of names you feel like.
So
I don't
yeah. So
here's
cult
one
leader
Here's one to
slash.
consider. Here's one to consider. Since it's real time, Putin, who 20 years ago was, okay, Russia's coming out of communism. They got rid of the drunk guy. Here's Putin. He's hanging out with, George Bush, and that's just degraded over the past 20 years. And now he's like our
Yeah.
James Bond supervillain called a personality guy.
Yeah, that's true. Same kind of thing. I mean, looking at how much they would lose if their system changed.
Let's
Yeah,
say
I
if this was like next Thursday we leave for home instead of this Thursday we leave for home. Maybe that's where Benteen gets another week to, kind of whisper
build
things.
a yeah, build a
Because
consensus.
one of the reasons I was bringing up the Manson thing is he wants the other guy corrected the captain thing first. He wants the other people to recommend things. I think he wants one of the other people to be like, "Hey, maybe I should like off the captain." And he's like, "Yeah, you should off. Excuse me, the colonel Sloan, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Maybe you should do that because that was the thing to make it seem like your idea that you're gonna go do what the leader wants you to do."
Right.
Because if you feel like it's your idea, oh, and my leader loved it so much, I think given a little time, he might be able to pull that hat trick, but he had one day, which was not enough.
No, definitely was not. But yeah, I think a little more time, a little bit more finding, the way in, getting some good lieutenants to, you know, kind of be his proxy. I think that certainly would have been uh more time would have made him more effective. It was just a very inter I mean, of course, I mean, even with an hour long program, you got to show that transition in kind of an accelerated way. Because he was like, hey, 6 months from now, we're gonna be drinking milkshakes full of drinking
So
milkshakes made of chocolate. Is that what he said?
maybe. Well, yeah, the language changes a little bit once you
Yeah.
separate it for a while. 30 years,
Yeah.
you'll change it.
Uh-huh.
I say some weird things now that I wouldn't have said in America, having lived in Japan for a while.
Oh yeah, I bet. But no, he was like actually, but extolling the virtues of why it would be so good to go back. Like that was, I guess maybe that was just his tool to get people to pull together and listen to him at that point, right? The promise of returning to Earth was sort of the carrot that he was using to motivate his people.
Well, what would have happened
Um,
with the Heaven's Gate? Because he was like, we're going to go on the spaceship and be saved and be in heaven forever and drink their milkshake, which was not the
yeah,
milkshake you want. Let's say a day before that, the alien just showed up and said, hey, you don't need to do that. Just get on the ship. I mean, that
yeah.
would have
And
completely
he's like,
screwed up
no, 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 no. Yeah, it would have screwed it up, but
because
I mean that.
they can't have what he's promising because once they have what he's promising, they don't need him anymore. That's kind of the whole point, right?
Yeah, that's crazy, man. That really is. And it's just, you look when I look at, leadership and, where Benteen, where he was kind of on the spectrum. I think, I always say, technical competence is something that you need. You got to have absolute, people have to um, trust that you have their best interests ahead of your own, right? 100%. And then you have to have enough vulnerability or humility that when people, come to you with a problem or have a question about what you're doing, that you can listen and maybe even improve, your leadership style over time. So that humility, competency, and, trust is so important. So Benteen, I think he was technically competent, right? I think he knew how to fix the machinery, he knew how to stretch things, knew how to keep people alive. I think he looked out for their best interest as long as they continued to follow him. I don't think that puts their best interest ahead of his own, though.
That's
I
how you end
think,
up in a cult.
yeah,
Now
exactly. Right.
here's
Back
one
to the
that
cult. Yep.
he
Uh-huh.
does all the same things. He runs a hell of a cave meeting. He
Yeah.
wants to do the opposite of what I guess superiors or what Earth wants to do in this case. Um, but I'm thinking Morpheus and the Matrix. He wants to take that one ship out and like, we need everything for our defenses. That's what we've
Yeah.
decided. He's like, no. Runs his cave
Right.
meeting. We like Morpheus though, but he's kind of doing all the same stuff.
Yeah. Morpheus definitely was very different in Reloaded than he was in the
Yeah,
just
I
the
am
Matrix.
talking Reloaded. Although
Yeah.
original movie would be the same guy. We don't see Zion in that, so we don't see how he maybe chafes against his culture.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he
Good
turns
point.
and what everything he was promising is basically happening, which defangs the character. So and you see it in the movie. By the end, he's kind of looking like a depressed little guy wearing rags, where he looked like
Mhm.
cool as hell in the first one.
That's true. Yeah, he really did. So I think there was definitely some, is it better to rule in hell or serve in heaven kind of
Mm.
vibe going on also. Um, I think I, I can't help but think that Benteen had some. kernel, sorry, no pun intended, some nugget of altruism in his desire to keep everybody together. Now you said he was 15 when they left Earth.
That's what he says. So he's like
Okay.
45 now. Yeah.
Man, it's yeah, I was and I see people my age and I'm like, man, they look old. But I mean, I'm 10 years older than that, so he looks really old for being 45, man.
Oh, we
But I
get a
guess
lot of
living
that in the Twilight Zone.
yeah, I guess living in a desert wasteland will do that to you. The funny part though is how I'm sorry, you're gonna have to edit that. I just completely lost my train of thought, man.
I was thinking like, how hot is it? I thought they were going to give a temperature and they didn't. I was like, I want when they're playing baseball, I'm like, I actually want to know what the temperature is. What does he consider?
Yeah.
Is it
They
like
said
a
something about
hundred and
110, didn't they? At one point
okay.
in the
Did
show.
they? I didn't catch
Yeah.
that then. Because I was like, well, I like that because it's livable, but it sucks.
Yeah, exactly right. And I was like, yeah, it's Dallas on a hot day. What I was wondering though also was, kids, don't play baseball that close to it to your only ride to get you home. Okay. Then I was like, I mean, maybe they need a little bit of shade. So, that helps.
Should
I
be
like
able to take a
slow.
meteor hit or two, so to handle
That's
baseball.
true. Sloan, when he was told by Benteen that it was so hot that it's people are going to pay for it later. They'll either be injured or some of the old people even worse. And Sloan was just like, well, I mean, if this level activity is too hard on them, then, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe, no, maybe it's exactly what they need, is what he said. I was like, yeah, what you need is some good vigorous exercise, young man. Now get out there and
175 heat
run
stroke
around.
victims admitted in Tokyo yesterday.
Oh no, really?
Well, it's a pretty big city. That's not
Yeah.
8 million people.
Did you notice the sounds in Sloan's office?
Um,
Just the background sci-fi sounds.
oh, like Forbidden Planet sounds are like so ubiquitous to me now. I probably
Yeah.
didn't. There's there,
Okay. Yeah. It was. Yeah. It was all there. Very kind of halfway. I'd say between Forbidden Planet and the bridge on the Enterprise,
Yeah, but
original
those sounds
series.
are important. One of the biggest things where they did the director's edition of Star Trek: The Motion Picture a couple years ago is they
Mhm.
finally added the bridge sounds onto the Enterprise, and I'm like, oh,
Right.
now it feels
Yeah.
like the Enterprise.
It
Because when you watch
does.
that movie
Yeah.
before, it didn't. It was
Mm-mm.
weird. Just putting that
Yeah.
sound layer made it work much
Yeah.
better. So sci-fi sounds, but it would have been weird if it just felt like some dude's office. So the sci-fi sound certainly needed to be there. But I guess that's how they work best. I don't like notice them completely consciously, but
Yeah.
I
No, it
noticed that they weren't
was.
there.
It was. It just. Yeah. I think. Like I said, you said they're ubiquitous, and I just sort of. I don't know. I just kind of picked up on that for whatever reason.
I also play a lot of synthesizers, so that just sounds like
Oh,
all
that's
the
just all
time
the
to me.
time. Yeah. It just sounds like a Tuesday. It just
Yeah.
sounds like any other Thursday. Um, so yeah, Benteen said their children psychologically and emotionally, and I was thinking I wrote down they're institutionalized. Can they survive on their own? Can they be released into the wild? Fair questions or no? I mean,
Well, my quote is now the cap has gone ice cream crazy. I guess he was just talking about the milkshake. And I was like, how old is he
that's like
psychologically? Is
that's
he
like
older than
asking a
the
child, yeah, if they want more ice cream.
yeah, if everyone on the in the it's not the shelter. If everyone in the colony is psychologically young, well, he is too. Why would he be any older than the rest of them?
Yeah. I don't
I
know.
mean, it's
Uh,
Lord of the Flies, right? Is it Jack? No, Jack's the one we be like, I don't remember. Whoever takes over, he's like, I'm smarter than the rest of you. I'm older than the rest of you psychologically, so I'm in charge.
yeah, and then it's game on, right? To see if anybody challenges you. And he did note that, kind of the way a society devolves. Like if we don't continue to pull together, work together, um, then when the Earth ship does come, he's not going to find a society. He's going to find, uh, what do you say? Basically, he sounds made it sound like cannibalism. Individuals, the breakdown of society, cats and dogs living together.
I
Uh,
mean, let's assume he's been captain for 15 years. I mean, he has been doing a good job for those 15 years. A couple of the tools in his toolbox, those quality ones, are a little weird. in the setting
Right.
of this colony, I guess it's
Yeah.
fine, but once you burst the bubble and bring in the rest of the world, it's not fine.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if this fits in because I think it does. One of the few there was well, I don't want to say few. There were some rapid fire questions being asked of the colonel when he was talking to the people, and they were like, what city do the Dodgers play in? Are there still major leagues? A woman asked, are there still public schools? Did you
Well,
catch that?
yeah, I guess in the 1960s they were only when public schooling started with the 1880s, 1890s. So I guess we're talking 1963 Twilight Zone view, right? Of people watching
Yeah,
this
yeah,
show.
yeah. Uh-huh.
It might still seem like something that could fall apart. I mean, we've had two world
Because
wars. It's only 60 years
yeah.
old.
I mean,
Um,
in current day, the political climate currently in the United States, there are, you know, not an insignificant number of people that want to, close the Department of Education, get rid of public schools, and do something else. So I guess it was a
I've heard
question
people
back
talking
then as
about,
well.
yeah, I have heard people talking about just get rid of the federal Board of Education because that only started around 1980, I believe. I
Uh,
think it was a Reagan thing. It's not that old.
mhm.
So there, no, I don't know what kind of dodgy politics once you start diving into that topic where you get, but I have heard some people say like just leave it to states, which I guess until 1980 it was basically left to states. Because then we start getting what
Yeah.
like No Child Left Behind and this STEM stuff, which
Hmm.
is across the country. And if someone in Alaska doesn't like it, they're going to get grumpy about it. I don't know.
Right.
Hey, this is again on subconscious level, but I was trained to be a teacher, and in 2003, 2004, got the idea I probably don't want to be in a public school and ended up teaching in Japan. So.
Right. Yeah.
So maybe I didn't like the public school system, but I left. They say if you don't like it, leave, and I guess I did.
Yeah, that's true. So I guess what you're trying to say, Matt, is wherever men live, they struggle. It's a
Yes,
struggle. Like
yes.
I think that was Benteen's sort of last plea, which you think is going to be all rainbows and unicorns when you get to Earth. It's not. It's going to be a struggle.
Be nicer temperatures though. That's something.
It really would be, and maybe a chance to live their own. Again, I don't. He might have the closest bit of perspective on why they left and what the threats are to go back. Um, but I don't know that was, did you ever come out and say, like, if we go back, these are the reasons we left, and those things still exist? Like, I don't think that was really laid out at any
No,
point.
well, again, he left at 15, so
Yeah.
how much does he's got a childhood, he's got rose covered glass. He probably
Hmm.
thinks he has rose covered glasses on anything he thinks of Earth, right? And he
Right.
sells it to the people to sell them this promise, so they'll have faith in that,
Yeah.
which, by proxy means they have faith in him.
Hmm.
So he's been weaponizing his useful memories a bit. And
Sloan says, yeah, Sloan says some kind of cool. He's like, men are angry, jealous, unforgiving, yet every man is his own master. Um,
like I
and
didn't
that
think he
was,
realized this was going to be a conflict within himself until, Sloane comes out of the ship. Like up to that point, he
yeah.
probably wanted it as bad as anyone.
Hmm.
And once the ship's there, I don't know.
Yeah. And I wonder how much thought was going to, like if it was a long-term assumption that they would stay together, get a land grant, which apparently is something they were still doing in 1991, and be able to kind of like go out and have their own funky commune where they all kind of live and farm and work together. Uh, Maybe that was the plan, and then somehow realized that that wouldn't. Well, not somehow, they had that conversation. When Sloan said, "Yeah, well, get everybody home, let everybody
Bentine
go where they want to go," and
compound.
Benteen was just like, "No, no, we're all staying together, man." He was like, "Did you ask them?" No. It's like asking them if they want ice cream. So yeah, that's I think where that conversation came down to. We didn't see it on screen, but I'm assuming somebody repaired the landing gear door after
I've got
Benteen
a
hit it with a fence post.
we've got a land grant right outside of Waco, Texas. I mean, that's kind of what he wants.
Yeah, 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 exactly. That's a good point, man. It really is.
No, I do appreciate your communist analogy too, but yeah, I'm stuck on the God one here.
Well,
So
and I think there is just such a touch of, because you look at, kind of the dream of communism. And my wife and I did a river cruise where we went into Budapest, spent a few days in Hungary, and then kind of went up the Danube and ended up out of Germany. And one of the guys on the cruise was former Soviet military. And, he said, he kind of shared with us kind of the dream that they were fighting for. And the dream was, not necessarily for everybody to be equal, but for everybody to be prosperous. And, it'll be tough for a while, and we're all gonna have to work together. But then, once we get manufacturing up and going, and once we get, the infrastructure built, and, once we get, people to buy our products, and we get to export those things, then like things will be good for everybody. And it never quite got there, and it sort of collapsed in on itself. At least the Soviet Union did. By the time we came along, but it was really interesting to hear that side of it and kind of what they were fighting for and what they kind of where they thought they were heading. So who sells those dreams to people, and who gets everybody kind of pointed in the right direction to think about that, that theoretical fictional end game, better than, like you said, a cult leader. So I think that there are, a lot of connections between the two, a lot of connective tissue.
um, I do want to get into our questions a bit. The first being who in this episode goes into the Twilight Zone.
I,
I
you
mean,
know,
Rod says this is the
yeah.
Twilight Zone at the start, so that would suggest everybody, but that's not really my answer.
Man, I don't think I mean, not to skip ahead too much, but I don't think anybody did. Like, I think this was, I mean, other than the fact that this was set on a foreign planet, this was probably the most real world episode of The Twilight Zone that I've ever seen. I didn't see anything metaphysical. I didn't see anything dream state. I didn't see anything supernatural. I just saw this situation that people were in, and just the reality of how people try to cling to what they have because they're afraid of what they'll lose.
I'm gonna put Ben Teen squarely into the Twilight Zone, and I'll get to
Okay.
that in a moment. But yeah, I think he actually, like you said, most of this is just the reality of the future they're presenting to us.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
and everyone's just living their life. Sloan is definitely not in the Twilight Zone. He's
Mm-mm.
really just doing
Yeah.
his job.
And I think the only time that I would consider him in the Twilight Zone was when he was wandering around the cave saying, "Hey Jojo, want me to tell you about Earth and the seasons and the colors?" But that wasn't the Twilight Zone. That was just,
Well, that's where I'm gonna
crazy.
argue a little bit. He has his snap where he comes out of it and realizes
Right.
what's just happened. And to me, that
Yeah.
actually is the twist of the episode. That
Right.
he's because it's almost like if he's just gonna live there, be deluded till he dies. I mean,
Hmm.
that's the crazy old man talking to himself, right?
Yeah.
But he has a snap where it was just a phase, and he realizes and understands what he did. Again, it's not supernatural, but I'm like, oh, that is for me at least a full step into the Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
Regular guest host Andrew pointed out early on, like for him, the deepest you go into the Twilight Zone is when you just cannot comprehend how these characters will go on after the episode ends. And you can't
Yeah.
comprehend how this guy is going to go on now that the episode has ended.
Ooh, baby. Yeah, and that might be some context that I'm missing there, but like I think this was an excellent episode. I'm really glad that I spent an hour watching it and more time talking to you about it. Um, there
So
was definitely a break from reality, and I guess if that's, going into the Twilight Zone, then yeah, Benteen was the guy who broke from reality and went on. Now what happens to him now? How long does he live? Does he end up, swinging from that same? I don't know what that lady was swinging from, but you know, it's
yeah,
still
they only
there.
share a feet.
Yeah. Here I am trying to be delicate. Yeah, they only show her feet. So yeah, how do they go on? I don't know, but you're right. That
Wasn't
the
he
coming
like
out of it.
wasn't he like this is the last fix for this essential piece of tech, and I guess that's okay because the ship's coming. Like he's like
Yeah.
we're not going to be able to fix this again. I mean, maybe it's easier with one person. I own it and then 130 whatever, but 36 I think. But yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. That tech is not that's where I was thinking so much Mad Max as their jury rigging
Yeah.
stuff.
But that snap back to reality is, it seems like it's it was poorly timed, man. If that had happened 5 minutes earlier, maybe if they didn't go try to fetch him, if they didn't launch the fetching party, he might have, instead of hiding, he might have snapped out of things on his own a few minutes earlier. I don't know, but
I think it took the image of the saucer escaping atmosphere too.
yeah,
Really
yeah, I think it did.
push it
Hmm.
in. Which does does Benteen deserve it? It seems like he's basically been doing a good job for a while, even though he's a bit caughty. He is
Yeah.
having basically, it seems like mostly a psychological episode here that he, snaps out of, but he's still making these choices. I guess it's like when they have it's a murder or manslaughter, you know?
Well, I mean, look at, and this is not in my notes anywhere because I'm just kind of thinking of it now, but what was the psychological toll for Benteen to lead this colony for the last 15 years? And what were the, what was the stress on him in order to do that? What was the daily stress and lack of sleep and um, you know, the propensity to sort of, bend the fine points of reality to create this narrative that kept everybody pointed in the same direction. And if that became your way of thinking and your only way of thinking over, the course of 15 years, then how do you just come out of that yourself and adapt in such a short amount of time? I think there was a time, and I think there an argument can be made that he was trying to take care of his people. The way that he found that was effective was to be this cult-like leader. Like I said, use those psychological instruments to affect their behavior. I don't think Benteen was a bad guy, and I don't know that only bad people deserve to go to the Twilight Zone, but I don't I don't feel like he deserved his trip to the Twilight Zone. How are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm thinking see, I'm just trying to think of what the solution is to Captain Hindsight here. I want to be Captain Hindsight.
Oh yeah.
And when my first couple years avoiding public schools, I taught at environmental schools where kids would come for a few days and sometimes the kids would stay overnight and they'd get homesick. So what do? Pop some Benadryl in them, knock them out. That's what they should have done with Benteen. Just
Jameson's baby.
drugged them up, tossed them on, and flew away. Because it is kind of their responsibility. That might be where Sloan did make a bit of a bad call, like you said. Doing a
Hmm.
fetching party might have been a hindrance. Although, again, I think it did need to be the ship flying off to
Yeah.
really set it
I
in. But
think I think everything that came out of Sloane's mouth was, it seemed to me, was, Earth is good. Sure, there are wars. They pop up, they cool off, but generally things are getting better. Like what we're doing is good, and that's and like you said, they only talked about the United States. So what does that mean? Individual freedoms and you know being able to decide your own destiny and take your own chances and stake your own claim and those kind of things. So that was Sloane. Sloane was, you make your own decision. You decide. Ask your people. Benteen was the collective guy, right? We're all in this together. We sink or swim as a colony. We stay together or we perish, essentially. So I think for Sloan to punch him in the face, Jim Kirk style, and put him on the ship would have really been 180 degrees out of phase with everything else I saw Sloan do in this episode.
I guess that's why I was saying get the medical officer, give him some Benadryl.
Little hypo spray.
Little hypo spray of Benadryl, yeah,
But then
or
but if you
something
ripped that,
stronger.
so if that shirt was ripped, Well, I guess it wasn't Benteen's shirt that sold for $1,600 at auction. It was they would have had to rip Sloane's shirt. And then would it have been worth more or less at auction if it was a
Um,
stage ripped shirt?
one thing I found interesting looking at all the Twilight Zones and a couple side sources is while Rod Serling is generally very progressive and forward thinking, one thing he seemed incapable of, which you just mentioned, was he's maybe because he was a veteran, he seemed incapable of imagining a world without war. Because
I, I
the
yeah,
Carol for Another Christmas seems to posit that there will always be war. Let's do it responsibly.
that true, and Roddenberry also, was Serling a World War II veteran
Yes, oh
or
yeah.
a veteran? Okay.
Philippines, island nasty stuff. But
Yeah.
Roddenberry seemed a little more like we can eventually grow beyond war, where
But
Serling did
not but
not
yeah,
seem.
but not without, having World War III first and
Okay, good point.
or the eugenics war or the second civil war as some are come to call it. Yeah, it's interesting, but when you look at those folks, man, I mean they were, children for World War One. They had World War Two. Like even when I was a kid in the 70s, it's like, all right, like you just extrapolate out, right? We had one, we had two, we're gonna have three.
Yeah, in the
Um,
80s, we were all waiting to blow up in a nuclear explosion. I
and we're all
remember
waiting for
that.
the hydrogen war. I never heard it called that before. I guess the H bomb was the new thing, the shiny
Yeah,
new toy.
yeah. Let's tripometer this one. 0 is not trippy. 5 is very trippy. Where would you like to place this?
Well, I mean, other than I didn't find it trippy at all, other than Sloane's, you know, 24-hour, actually, it was more of a just a couple of minute break from reality. Um, so I think I'm going to go with I think a personal low on this one. And again, I thought this was an excellent episode of television and told a great story. I think we're down in like one category on the tripometer.
Okay, interesting. I was actually I'm thinking quite opposite and going 4. Here and my thinking is we get eye candy and we get shiny sci-fi ships, we get
Hmm.
rusty sci-fi dystopia, and we get a very well formed character doing insane things which almost makes sense. That's the thing about Benteen. It's not, you never are like, he's crazy but he's not unrealistic, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I think
Like
it
the
was
way
the realisticness. There's probably a better word for that. Realism.
naturalistic.
Yeah, we'll try that. And I think the realism that, this episode was able to paint, even with reused props and matte paintings and spaceships that we've seen already. I found it to be such a realistic scenario that it was more to me just a kind of a more of a straightforward um drama, just sci-fi drama.
Yeah, I guess for me it's just like we said, Benteen probably didn't deserve it, but his actions of the week preceding the departure, those actions do deserve it.
Yeah.
So and now but he's paying the worst price possible for it because he doesn't actually, well, he attacks the landing gear a bit with a pole. That's the most violent he gets, you know?
And if you're going to try to take out a vehicle with a pole, Matt, the only way to do it is to leave the concrete stump attached to the pole and then throw it, Steve Austin style.
Right. Or this um the Stranger in the Alps, John Goodman car smashing.
There you go.
That's the other way to smash a vehicle with a pole. I guess he has a baseball bat, but so it happens when you meet a stranger in the Alps. That is the censored version. Okay.
Yeah, so break from reality slash getting left behind. I think Benteen's, actions on Wednesday, I guess, led directly to that.
Yeah. So I for me that those kind of mind those are mind benders for me, which is where my 4 is coming from. But
Yeah.
no, I mean honestly, when the guest says the number and I'm thinking the exact same number, I'm like, well, that's kind of boring, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's much more
But like,
interesting
oh,
when
or
you
we
say
just like,
1 and I
oh,
say 4.
oh, yeah, me too. And like I said, and it's not because I didn't like the episode. I thought it was a really good. I mean, Possibly. I mean, I think very highly of this episode. I enjoyed it. There's a lot to chew on here. But I think just the fact that I got sucked into the like the actual, reality or perceived reality of the situation, kind of dialed up the reality and dialed down the trippiness.
You called out the prologue as doing a fair amount of world building, but for
Hmm.
early 60s television in particular, this is a very well built world for a 50-minute
Hmm.
episode of television. Like I didn't
Yeah.
feel like they were like pressing questions that I didn't
Hmm.
understand about what was going on here, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm trying to think of this versus, it just popped in my mind what was it, the third season of Galactica where they're on New Caprica,
Oh
and
yeah, yeah,
yeah, things are not great,
yeah.
and they decide to return to the stars.
That
Oh,
that
spoiler alert if you haven't seen that.
that slightly, I mean, that's compounded though, because unlike this planet doesn't have like Cylons show up when they're thinking about it, you know?
Right.
They don't
Exact.
have
Yeah.
this existential threat now coming
Yeah.
in.
Uh-huh. But it's still, it had the kind of crappy environment and harsh
Oh, it definitely looked like a
conditions
suck
and
place to live, and there were people who
yeah.
definitely were happier staying on the ships, growing
Yeah.
mustaches.
Yeah. Just getting, just putting on some weight and, hanging out with Lieutenant Duala.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, that's yeah. For
That
I
was a
don't know.
thing.
I just have seared in my brain mustache Adama, Daddy Adama, of course. She just looks so weird with a mustache, and it
It
makes
did.
sense, you know. I mean, plenty of Hispanic men would wear facial hair. It just looks weird on him for some reason.
Yeah, it does.
I guess we'll wind this one down for today, unless you want to throw a final thought on it.
No, man, just thanks for having me. Always a pleasure to talk to you. And yeah, I'll come back anytime you want, man. I enjoy our chats.
Word up. And you're wrapping up Talking Ted right now, so I guess tell the
Yeah.
good folk about that.
Yeah, our last episode of Talking Ted, presented by Bear Fight Whiskey, is going to drop on the 8th, the 10th of July. And that is just Jessica and I chatting about season one, maybe what we're looking forward to, what we expect to see, maybe what we're afraid to see in season two, which they're already working on now. And we presented the world with Bear Fight Kentucky Reserve, which is a straight bourbon aged in a reposado tequila barrel. So it kind of gives it a little bit of a oakiness and peppery flavor, and it's really quite good. Bear Fight Kentucky Reserve, if you're interested, and if you use the code BF20 on the Bear Fight Whiskey website, you'll get $20 off of shipping.
All righty. As for us, we're on Patreon at Podcastio Podcastius. You can hear us talk a little more. We are talking a bit more about whiskeys and scotches and so forth at the beginning of this, for example. You will also hear Podcast 1999, where we talk about Space 1999, Films and Phils, talking about really good and really bad films. And then on the video game sides, Luke loves Pokemon and the game show with gamers gaming each other.
So many games.
Okay. I think I'm just gonna stay in this podcast. You can go. I'm gonna stay. I don't,
We're not, there's not going to be a fetching party, Matt. If we leave, we're not coming back for you.
I'm gonna start the solo podcast where I just talk to myself for 5 hours at a time.
So say we all. I mean, so say
So say
me.
me.
So say me only.
Say me.